Welcome to lesson 4 of Calisthenics Kidz. In today's lesson we're going to go over the headstand, but we're going to learn it in a slightly different way. So if you haven't seen lessons 1 and 2, where we covered the frog stand and the bear, you're going to need to, because that's going to be useful for the challenge that we're going to attempt at the end. Before we get started, if you're doing this in your home, then you're probably going to want a pillow if it's the first time you've done headstands. If you're doing it with your kids, make sure you supervise them. And if you're doing it as a child, then maybe bring mum and dad in, because we don't want anybody breaking anything. So we're going to start with our bear, if anybody can remember that. Then we're going to do our frog stand. So these are going to be our 2 warm-up movements of the day. So we'll see if anybody can remember the technical cues of either of those. So for the bear, we're going to start off with our hands under our shoulders, our knees under our hips. Push that bum up as tall as you can. Chin on your chest, and then all you're going to do is walk forward, keeping your legs as straight as you can. And then if you run out of room space, we can try and coordinate walking backwards. This is going to be slightly harder. And we'll go forwards again, keeping that chin on your chest, looking at your toes. So your bum should be as high in the air as it possibly can, and we should be able to control that movement. Now what we're going to do, cover this in lesson 2, is we're going to try and snake our way around the space we've got available. So chin on our chest, bum up nice and high, going to go slightly towards the right, and then we're going to come slightly towards the left. So by crossing over between right and our left hand, that's going to help us in tomorrow's lesson, which is going to focus on something called the monkey. Now, for anyone who is particularly skilled, let's try that pattern, but coming backwards. If you're struggling with coordinating this, and this is the first time you've ever done this, don't worry, it is difficult, but stay with it, it'll get easier. So bum up nice and high, chin on your chest, and then we're going to try and come backwards. So still opposite arm, opposite leg, working on coordination, balance, strength, and a little bit of stability. And now what I want you to do is practice just dropping your hips. Again, this is going to be relevant in a lesson that is going to come in the coming days. So can you drop your hips as you come back? Okay, so our brain should be pretty switched on by now, because there's a lot going on. Again, if that was difficult, take it at your own speed. Now we're going to recap frog stand, which is our first lesson. Tommy, how you doing, mate? Good to see you. We're chatting to Tommy on the Platform to Perform podcast later this week. Next thing we're going to recap is the frog stand, which we did in lesson 1. Now remember, if it's too difficult, keep your toes on the floor. If it's too easy, straighten those arms. So I'm going to show you from the side, gripping the floor, elbows inside our knees. And what we're going to do is make sure that the hips are higher than the head. That's going to make it easier, even if it does feel like we're going to fall flat on our face. So if you need a pillow nearby, chuck that down. If you feel like a pro, then don't worry about it. So we're going to tip forward, push the floor away, and all we're going to do is see if we can hold this position here. If that's too easy, we can straighten our arms. And if that's easier still, we can take the knees off. But again, don't be surprised if it feels quite difficult to take a knee off, because that's something that requires a lot of upper body strength, and if this is the first time you've been doing frog stands, certainly not easy. Okay, we'll do one more frog stand before we get into today's lesson, which is going to be on the headstand. So, last thing we're going to do, again, if this is difficult, keep your toes on the floor. You're still focusing on tipping yourself forward, and notice how, if I do this properly, hips are higher than head, and my toes can be lifted off the floor without me going anywhere, just because I'm pushing down with my hands. If I was keeping too much weight back, as soon as I go to take a toe off, I would just fall over. So whichever variation is appropriate for you. So tip forward. If you can point a toe behind you, excellent. If you can point 2 behind you, even better. And if that's easy, straighten those arms. Okay, now we're going to get into our headstand for today. So if you're a kid watching this, make sure that you've got mum and dad about, don't want anything broken. You might need a pillow if this is the first time you've done headstands. Now you'll see where the bear movement feeds into our headstand, because the easier we can get into this bear position here, the easier it's going to be to walk ourselves in to the positions we're going to work on today. So the first thing that we're going to work on is getting into that position. So you're going to start with your hips high, and you're going to bring your feet as close towards your hands as you possibly can. What that's going to do is make it easier to transition into a full headstand, and it's going to make it easier for the steps that we're going to go through. So find yourself an appropriate space, make sure you're not going to break anything, and all we're going to do is form a triangle with our head and our hands and walk our feet as close as we can to our hands. That's all we're going to do for this first step. So hands down, head slightly in front, making that triangle, hips in the air just like we've done with our bear, and then just walk your feet as close as you can. The more, if you feel this muscle's working hard, that's good, but the closer we can get to here, the easier it is to get hips on top of our shoulders, and that's going to make it easier to transition into our full headstand. If we try and do that and we're all the way back here, what happens is we kick up and we can't really find the balance point because our upper body is working too difficult. So I'm going to give you a chance to practice that, just walking your hips up as high as you possibly can using that bear movement that we covered in lesson 2 of Calisthenics Kidz. Now, if this is the first time you've done headstands, don't be surprised if you feel a little bit like the blood is rushing to your face. If you need to stop at any point, that's absolutely fine. If you're a kid doing this with parents, have your mum or dad close by to make sure you're not going to fall and break anything, because if you've never spent time upside down, you probably have no idea where your hips are in relation to your shoulders. Anytime we're upside down, that's all it is: body awareness, strength and mobility. Right, the next step we're going to go to, once we've practiced having those hips nice and high, is can we get one knee on top of one of our elbows, keeping those hips nice and high. So this is what that's going to look like. I'm going to try this with glasses on. This could be a you've been framed moment waiting to happen if they break. So, head in front of us, hands forming the base of our triangle. From this position, we're going to put the top of our head down, use a pillow if you need to, and from here, all we're going to do, in fact, I'm going to take these off, all we're going to do is walk our feet up as high as we possibly can, and from this position, take one of your knees and put it on top of one of your elbows. This foot here should feel so light that it can come off. If it's too heavy, it's probably too far back, and as soon as you try and move it, it'll just fall back down. So walk up as high as you can, one knee on your elbow, hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And if you need to relax and let your head have a bit of a breather, then take a few seconds, maybe even a minute, before you try swapping sides. So you should be able to see it's easier to balance when our hips are on top of our shoulders versus if our hips are too far back. That's why that bear movement is so important in getting us into a proper position. Next thing we're going to do is see if we can get both knees on both elbows and just hold that position. Key tip here is to make sure we're not just relaxing with our hands on the floor. If you relax with your hands on the floor, you can't get any sort of grip and you're just going to fall straight over. I'm going to show you what this looks like from the front, and then I'm going to show you what this looks like from the side. So I'm going to start with my hips as high as the backs of my legs will let me get them. So I'm going to show you from the front first. So you watch my hands, I'm gripping the floor, I'm placing my head at the tip of a triangle, and then from here
I'm going to walk my hands up as far as I can get them. One knee on one elbow, not rushing the position, pushing into the floor, both knees on both elbows. Can I hold that for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now I'm going to show you part of today's challenge that will be coming at the end, and it's can we transition from a headstand
into a frog stand and finish in a squat, but I'll show you that properly later. Now I'm going to show you that from the side angle. You'll see if I can get my hips high, I can sit there into that tuck position quite nicely. If I haven't got the flexibility to get there, then it's going to be very difficult. So I'm gripping the ground with my hands, walking my feet as close to my hands as my flexibility will allow. So there's my triangle. Now I'm going to grip the ground,
bum up nice and tall, and coming as close as I can. Right knee on right elbow, pushing into the floor, left knee on left elbow. Now all I want you to do in this position, if you find it easy, is just gently rock side to side. You should be pushing into the floor. If you find yourself falling over, it's because you're not gripping into the floor, or your hips are too far back like mine are now. So hips on top of shoulders, just play about in that position, and again, let's do part of the challenge. So elbows inside knees. Have we got the strength
to transition? That strength is going to come from gripping the ground. If your hand's just flat, you're not going to be able to create that balance and stability to transition back towards you. Now what we're going to do is see if we can take one of our legs and straighten them above our head. It's important when we're doing this to keep holding and keep gripping the ground. It is going to be difficult because chances are, if you've never done this before, and you'll probably see on this video, that where you think is completely vertical with the leg is actually closer to being on the floor. So this is why if you've got a wall, do it up against the wall. If you have mum or dad with you, have them just behind you, just to make sure that you're safe. And if you've got a chance to, film this, because it will show you where your brain thinks you are and where you actually are. So a bit of body awareness involved with this as well. So we're going to try and straighten one leg whilst keeping the other leg on the knee. Now I know it'd be tempting to shoot up into a full handstand because we're getting close to that, but resist the temptation for now. So hands under shoulders, head slightly in front, and then from here we're going to keep our elbows in, walk up as close as our legs will allow us, right knee on right elbow, left knee on left elbow, and now we're going to straighten a leg of our choice. So I'm going to go for my right leg, and I'm going to grip the floor with my hands. So I'm just going to try and straighten that as close as much as I can. Just play about with where that leg is, and how much easier or difficult that makes it for your upper body. And then when you come down, come back to the knee, and then just to make life easy, let's just bring our legs back and pop our knees on the floor. Now this is where it's really helpful if you are using either a video to film yourself or if you've got mum and dad with you. So I don't actually know how straight my leg was there. Probably not. When I first started these, where I thought was completely vertical was way off. So have a go at that. Gripping the floor, have a play about with where your leg is, because you'll soon see that slight adjustments make it more difficult and slight adjustments make it easier. The next progression we're going to go on to is straightening the other leg. So you've already had a go on one side, we're going to try it on the other side and just see where you feel strongest. Go through, each time you go through, get used to taking the same leg off the same knee and go through each of these steps one by one. Don't rush into the headstand because you won't build the stability up and you'll just end up toppling over and breaking something. Been there, done that, doesn't go down well. Okay, so now we're going to try the other side. So now I'm going to show you what this looks like from the front. So, hands in line with each other, gripping the floor. Head down in front. Now we're going to walk our legs up as much as we can. Now I'm going to put my right knee on my right elbow.
My left knee's on my left elbow, and all I'm going to do is straighten that left leg as much as I can. You can see that this elbow, this knee, wants to naturally come off it, but if I can build stability in this position and get used to clawing with my hands, it's going to make it much easier when we go on to the full progression in a second's time. So slowly bring yourself back down.
Again, make sure you're working in a safe space. Okay, so we're nearly there at the full headstand, and we're nearly there at today's movement challenge. Today's movement challenge is going to involve a full headstand if we've got that in the locker. If not, we're going to focus on a tuck headstand, and we're going to combine it with a frog stand and a squat, which we've covered in previous lessons, otherwise known as the frog. Before we get to that full headstand, the last thing we're going to tick off is the ability to take both knees off of our elbows and keep them glued together. In this position, again, it's going to be tempting to shoot your legs up, and that's where a lot of people fall down. So you're going to bring your left knee off, bring your right knee off, and then bring them together and just hold them in a tuck position with your heels as close to your bum as you're able to. So now we're going to try that tuck position. We'll try and hold this for 5 seconds if we can. Nobody got strong falling over. So hands,
triangle, walk our feet up, right knee on right elbow, left knee on left elbow. Now what we're going to do is we're going to keep our heels as close to our bum as possible, so not down here, heels as close to your bum as possible, knees together, and just hold for 5, 4, 3, pushing into the floor, 2, 1, back onto your elbows. Now let's practice that challenge quickly. Can we transition into our frog stand?
Can we transition into our end position? Okay, so we're closing in on our full headstand. If your wrists are feeling a little bit worked, that's perfectly normal, especially if we've not done much exercise on our hands and wrists. There's going to be plenty of those in this 30-day Calisthenics Kidz lessons, so we will make sure that we give plenty of attention to them and make sure that we take any necessary steps to helping us out with that. Okay, final progression now before we go on to the movement challenge is the full headstand. We're still going to break each step down in the process. So first things first, we need to make sure we get our hips as high as possible when we're walking our way into the headstand. So that's why we're going to use the bear movement to get ourselves there. Second tip is to make sure that right knee goes on right elbow, left knee on left elbow. As soon as those knees come off, they're glued together. Then slowly we can straighten them and hold our headstand. You'll see from the video that where I think is fully vertical isn't, and this is why it's useful if you're training with mum and dad or brothers and sisters to make sure that that line is as straight as it possibly can be. Videos definitely help. So here is our full headstand. So key things, bear movement to start. Get your legs closer together. How you doing, Sean? Good to see you, mate. So I don't know how your training's going, but these are some things that may be useful, and also just some new things to explore given the fact that we don't have access to any equipment. So we're going to attempt our full headstand now, walking in with our bear movement, making sure that knees come off elbows at the same time, and making sure that we are gripping the floor with our hands. If there's any questions, by the way, drop them in, or anything that you are curious about how this might be used for kids, athletes, older adults, chuck them in so I can see them and so I can help answer them. So here is our full headstand. So I'm going to show you from the front and then show you from the side. So hands in line with each other, base of a triangle. Head goes down. We're going to bring our hips as high as we possibly can. What that's going to do is make it easier when we transition. Right knee on right elbow, left knee on left elbow, then we're going to bring them together. So squeezing them together, keeping our heels near our bum, and then once we feel stable,
we're going to slowly point them above us. Now, when you see this from the side, you'll notice that where I think I am completely straight, I'm probably not. From this position, just to get us used to our movement challenge, we're going to tuck back down, knees still together, open our legs slightly, and can we transition into our frog stand, which we learned in lesson 1, and our frogger, or our squat, which we learned in lesson 2. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is show you from the side, just so you can see how high my hips get and how much easier it makes it to transition. If we don't get the hips high, we basically kick up, fall over, break something, hopefully not something important. So, from the side, last thing of the day before we get into our movement challenge. So head down. The higher I get my hips, so if I'm here, it makes it much easier to transition, whereas if my hips are down here, I can't really get anywhere. So bum up high in the air, walk towards, right knee on right elbow, left knee on left elbow. You'll see where I think I'm straight, I'm probably not. Knees together, squeeze them together, pushing into the floor, slowly straightening our legs, pointing those toes, hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and back down. Okay, now we're into our movement challenge. We're going to go from a headstand into our frog stand, into our frogger or a squat. And if we're able to, this isn't going to be easy, but if we're able to, we're going to show a definite pause between each movement. If we can't get there, that's fine. If you want to, you can play about with a tuck headstand, which is when our knees are bent, and we can just spread the knees wider, get them back on our elbows, and then transition into the squat, because this isn't easy. We're using 3 movements, so today's headstand, lesson 1's frog stand, lesson 2's bear, and we're combining them all into one. So last movement challenge of the day, tag me in your attempts, Todd Davidson P2P Coaching, or get mum and dad to, and let's see who can nail this challenge. So headstand first, into frog stand, into our squat. Definite pause between the 3 if we've got that in the locker. So last one of the day. Hips nice and high. Then it's going to make it easier to transition onto the elbows. Knees together, slowly. So here's stage 1. Can we hold that headstand? Next thing we're going to do is bring our knees down, and now we're really going to have to grip the ground with our hands. So knees outside of elbows, and then all we're going to do, if we're able to, is just pull our head off the floor as slowly as we can. And if we're able to hold, then keep that position held. And the final part of the challenge is, can we transition into the squat or the frogger? Now there's your perfect demo, live. I was very worried that I might go flying into this. So have a go at it, challenge your kids, your athletes, even your parents. That'll make for some YouTube funny video somewhere along the line. Thank you for watching. That was lesson 4 of Calisthenics Kidz, where we're looking to improve kids' strength, confidence and movement skill using bodyweight training. If you found this useful, please share it. Please invite other parents, youth athletes, anyone you think this might be useful for. Let them know about it. Give them something to do in lockdown. Let's make use of this time rather than wasting it. All the best. Catch you in the next video.